I don't know what your Christmases look like, but mine, I come from a pretty big extended family. Like, my mom has 7 brothers and sisters, and so when Christmas comes, it means big Christmas. And so we always go to Montana, hang out with my cousins, hang out with the family, my grandma and grandpa. And one of the biggest times of this is always the giving and receiving of presents. I think you can really learn a lot about someone by the way that they give their presents or by the way that they receive them. And so I just want to talk about a few of those little nuances. You always have the person like my sister who always says, "This is what I've always wanted." And like, you could get her the biggest boy present ever, and she'd still, if it was wrapped and she opened it, her face would light up and she'd be like, "Oh yes, this is what I've always wanted." And it's like, sometimes it's like every present. So we have home video of her opening her presents, and after every present, it's always, "This is what I've always wanted." And so then there's also my aunt who will tell my dad, "Make sure he knows that I want this," like about my uncle. And so it's hilarious because my dad will try and actually help my uncle out, tell him what my aunt wants, but he never listens. And it's like, he wonders why his wife never likes the presents he gets for him, but he'll never listen to us because Christmas isn't about just getting people what they want. And I guess it's getting them things they don't want. But anyway, there's also the person who says, "I don't care what you get me." And this is what I am. I don't care. Like, if they want to give me a present, I'm not like, it's hard for me to just pick one thing that I want. And so, like, when people give me presents, oftentimes my facial expressions don't show the joy or maybe even the, like, disappointment that I may have. And so I always get this from people: if you don't like it, you can just take it back. Or my mom will always say this: "You don't like it? Well, we wouldn't have this problem if you would just tell me what you wanted in the first place." And so oftentimes I find myself struggling to put on a face, and I feel fake, I feel funny, I feel awkward. But sometimes I get through it. But I remember one specific Christmas when I was 10 years old, the thing that I wanted most, the thing I actually told my mom I wanted, was a Game Boy. And like, I don't know, there's something about that. I never would have had a game system, but having a personal Game Boy is just something that I really wanted. And I remember that Christmas opening like 5 presents. I still hadn't gotten it, and I was getting mad. I was kind of getting frustrated. And finally, my Christmas got to the pinnacle. I got a clear Game Boy with Donkey Kong Country in it. And so, as a kid, 10 years old, oftentimes I missed what Christmas was all about. I mean, I understood the story. I knew that Jesus was born in a manger, that 2,000 years ago he came to earth. But for a 10-year-old who ate too many pancakes Christmas morning, like, what does that mean for me? It's like, how does that really fit in? And I apply it to my life today, and I think I'm still sort of missing the mark. I'm missing what Christmas is all about. It's such a busy time. There's so many things going on. There's so many parties. There's just so many friends who I try and keep in contact with, that sometimes it just gets so confusing about what's going on. Or there's the pressure of gifts. There's getting people who, I'm a college student, and so I don't have much money, and so I have to pick and choose who I'm getting presents for, and worrying about if I'm offending somebody by not getting another present, or if I'm getting somebody a present who doesn't give me a present back. And for me, that's kind of like, it's not like I want a present, but like, for people that give me a present, I don't give them something back, then I feel bad. And so, like, I'm like wasting a present if I give to someone. But it's more of a business than a time to come closer to Christ. With our economy, with stores just selling things left and right, with stores being open on Thanksgiving, like, it's just, you get to see the business side of Christmas. And so, what do we need to do to spice things up a bit this Christmas? And so I want to look at sort of a different way of looking at the Christmas story about Christ coming to earth. So if you want to turn your Bibles to John 1, I'm going to read a little bit. But basically, Matthew and Luke both address the birth of Jesus by telling the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the man she was to marry, Joseph. But I want to look at the way John addressed the coming of Christ to this world. He does it in a unique way that I think simply gets to the point of Jesus coming to earth. So read with me. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." And then skip to verse 14 where it says, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." And so there it is. It's a little story. It's fairly simple, but it's full of meaning. And so from this statement of John, we see a staircase of Christ's relationship to God. It says, in the beginning was the Word. And then it steps up, and the Word was with God. And then it steps again, the Word was God. And then finally it says, he was with God in the beginning. And so I did a little research on what the word beginning meant. What does that expression in the beginning mean? And so it comes from the word arche, which is very similar to the word arco, meaning I rule or I begin. And so the significance about this, we get I begin, but it also means I rule. The significance of that is that it's a thought that which happened in the beginning set in place the rules that we live by today. And so by God creating earth in the beginning, we, living, thousands of years later, we're still under the rules of nature, under the law of that. We still live on the same earth that God created from the beginning, thus are subject to the rules and laws that which come from the beginning act. Scholars point out that the beginning is referring both to the beginning of the world, but also the beginning of the universe. And so the use of the word was are not just past tense, but it's in fact pointing to the eternality of the Word and of God. And so looking at how this applies to the Christmas story shows us that although man did not know Christ until he came into flesh, he really has been in existence from the very beginning. And so my first thought to think about today, and applying it to the Christmas story, is that God had the end in mind. We find in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. For 6 days God created everything that we see around us, and then on the seventh day he rested. It's what we base our entire lives off of. It's what everything has started at that one starting point. But God knew it was going to happen. He knew that everything on earth wasn't always going to be perfect. He let man have free will, and with that will, man turned from him, and they made choices that were dumb, stupid, just like us today. And so right from the first creation, God knew that there was going to need to be a new creation as well. And so just to talk about God having the end in mind, Isaiah 46, 9-10 says, remember the former things, those of long ago. I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand and I will do all that I please. And I just love the part where it says, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. And so we can sort of see that what God created in the beginning, his perfect earth, his perfect world that man was supposed to live in conformity with him was the perfect thing of what we're supposed to live by. And now that things have gone wrong, we can still look to that beginning thing of what the end is going to be like. And it's just everything in the very beginning was perfect. Evil had not been known. We were to live in a perfect unity with God, and that is what the end will be like as well. But for now, we are caught up in the time of waiting for the perfection to come back. Everything that has happened through the course of history has pointed to the need of a Savior, which is where my next point leads us. Jesus had the end in mind as well. So we see in John 1:14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Although he made his dwelling among us, many chose not to understand why Christ had come to earth. We find out from the time of Christ coming to earth, he was destined to die. And it's just kind of like a paradox. We see that one of the main purposes of Jesus' entire life was really to die. And it's a process because, everyone who is born is eventually going to die. But Christ's one purpose was to die for all sin. Christ had the end in mind in two ways. He had his physical life. He knew that throughout his life, he was living for a different purpose, for a different reason. And so, the story in John 2 where Jesus is at the wedding with Mary, and Mary asks him, you can do something about this. Jesus talks about his consciousness of his time. He says, dear woman, why do you involve me? My time has not yet come. Jesus had a very real idea of where he was going and when he was going to get there.